I never know what to say about it. Okay. We're live. I feel like I should say that this is crucial for our democracy. So where do I start? Where would you start? Dark. There's one thought. Where would you start?
I would put
That's a smart answer. Reagan, where would you start? Dark values on the shapes. What about you, Jordan?
I was thinking that the light sphere.
The light sphere.
Yeah.
You just start with the white part right here?
Yep.
Huh. So I don't know that there's a one right answer to this. I'm not going to start with a big black background. I think just from practical purpose is that my hand will get in it, and I just don't want to smear it around everywhere. I will paint some of the background at the same time that I'm painting the object though, because I want to soften those edges between them. You notice how soft, okay, look how sharp this edge is. You see how it almost vibrates on the screen? It's so sharp. Now compared to this edge. Oh, snap. You think that's a hard edge whenever you focus on it, but compared to this, that's a softer edge, right? Because that goes back in space. And look how soft this edge is. Oh, yeah. So you can't paint this part of the cylinder without the background at the same time. You have to paint that at the same time. I'm right-handed, so things on the left side of the board, I'll tend to tackle those first and kind of move to the right. I think general to specific, so I'm not going to paint super detailed initially, bigger brush. And I'm thinking, I usually paint kind of left to right. Sometimes I'll paint in the center and kind of radiate it out depending on what it is, but the center is sort of nothing, just like this. I'm probably going to tackle this top ellipse here and move from there. I don't know that that's the one right answer though. That's just the answer that I've come up with. As I get going, I may be like, oh, I really should have done this other thing first. I don't think so. It's a little place in the painting, if I get carried away here in a minute, that my drawing will disappear, and that would be tragic. Because this shape is an ellipse, and if that ellipse is off, it's a real challenge for a lot of people to freehand draw that. And so I'm going to take the time to kind of knock that in. Give me a small brush to. I'm going to be really careful about these ellipses because if you get the wrong shape, it destroys the illusion. Loose ellipses sink shipses. Even though I have a drawing on there, I'm still looking at the thing I'm drawing to make sure that it's accurate. Charcoal transfer is not 100% reliable. Has anybody watched The Matrix more than once? Maybe there's something I'd like to mention. How many times have you watched it? Oh, that's an even better answer.
I haven't seen it through three.
We have a art club movie night where we watch The Matrix together. So Avery can watch it. I know I've mentioned The Matrix before to you, and yet you refuse to watch it. I'm like almost out of, almost just like out of blind stubbornness. You're just like, I know you've said this is a great movie and I should watch it, and yet my kids are now old enough where I can show them great movies. The Matrix was one, and my daughter's head exploded whenever I told her that Neo was Jesus. She was like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally is." And Morpheus is John the Baptist. It's a Christian allegory. I watched Braveheart. Any of you seen Braveheart before? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably a little too violent for a 6-year-old. We have a saying in my family of what would William Wallace do? My boys were. William wanted to play basketball, and I was like, why don't you go, there's a gym up the street, a church gym, and why don't you go up there and play? Well, it looks like it may rain. Well, this is summertime. Like, what, you're afraid that you may get wet? He's like, well, yeah, I don't want to get wet. I just had a shower. And I'm like, come on, William, what would William Wallace do? So I was stuck. All right. I feel good about that. Was that it was kind of a little tedious in the beginning there, but I did get that detailed information. Now this is just a gradation. Ooh, and that's the wrong color. Not color, value. That's the wrong value. Who said color? I didn't say it. switching to another brush because this one's pretty gray. I just need this to be pushed lighter. I'm going to tell you one other thing that I do. I should have done this at the get-go. See, I told you I may have picked the wrong thing to do. Yeah, I did. From a teaching standpoint. One of the things I do like to do is choose my darkest dark and my lightest light, so I don't end up with my values skewed. It's called a value envelope. This means everything's got to exist within these boundaries, right? Black is black, what? Background, obviously, right? There's really not any black within the objects themselves, maybe a tiny bit right in here, but the rest of the objects, even this is not black. That's not black. There's no black in the objects. So I make a mental note of that. I say, David, there's no black in the objects, so I cannot put black in the objects. It's probably going to be true in yours. It's very rarely on a white object that it'll go fully to black. Okay? The same is true in a black object. It'll very rarely go to fully white. And so we look in this black mirrored surface. There's no white on there. There's lighter gray, but not white. You get that? Okay, so within the objects, right, this is my darkest dark, not quite black, but pretty close. My whitest white, it would be where? Where on here? What do you think? Inside the cube, right here?
Inside the circle.
Oh, in this area right here, okay. Yeah, it's a I don't know if that's concave or convex. It's one of those, the one that scoops in, whatever that is. I keep, in the video, this will be interesting. It's like, what is he doing this dolphin motion with his hand? That's a good possibility. Right here in the center of this sphere is a possibility. There may be a teeny bit right there on the top of that. Those are all possibilities. But there's no white in this section, right? So I got to keep that in mind, because if you're not careful, you'll push this from black to white. You see how easy that could be? You focus in on it, you forget about everything else, and this goes from black to white instead of gray to light gray. Okay? So here we have a place where we can go black, you have that black on that edge. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. Use this brush. I need some other brush options. Now, I could try to paint this here. I'm going to show you some methods for painting this straight line. One, I can try to freehand it, and it's going to be shaky, especially here, because you see how my hand is in the way of seeing the edge, right? So I really need to be on the other side of it. So I could flip this whole thing around. This is going to be way easier for me to paint that edge because I can see the edge and the brush at the same time. Does that make sense? Right? So don't be afraid to flip your board over if you need to. The same thing's true painting up underneath it versus try to do it this way. It's hard to paint this edge. You can't see where the edge is, right? I am going to show you another method, though. Where's that ruler? Will you hand me that ruler? Thank you. I'm going to turn this around. You guys see this? Big old hand and arm is in the way. holding that up against that edge. It's got a little bit of waviness, but that's way quicker, faster than freehanding it, and it doesn't have quite the wobble. And the other thing you can do, and I didn't show you this because you already know how to do it, is just take a piece of tape and tape it off. There's no rule against that. When you do this on the ruler, make sure you wipe it off. So you just put a piece of tape there and tape it off. Paint it and then take your tape off. I am going to put this over here because I'm going to be just painting this edge for a moment. So now that I have that dark there, I can work up against that. The black helps give me reference for how light or dark that should be. Without the black, this is going to seem too dark. Did that make sense what I said? Without this black here, whatever I put, the gray in here is going to seem dark because it's in comparison to white, but it really needs to be in comparison to black. It's that color value relativity thing from color design. Looking at this gradation, it goes sort of dark to light as it moves up. It's darker here, lighter up there, and of course it goes dark to light this way. So normally I don't talk about what I'm doing when I'm painting. I'm just painting, and I used to just do that for students, and they didn't think about the thought process, but I do kind of plan each little step about what I'm doing before I start painting, so I don't end up making a mess of things. Who is that? Joey. Where were you today, Joey?
What?
We missed you in the first part of class.
Yeah, I had like a brain fart. I thought it was 12:20.
Yeah, I actually worked hard to get this class to meet at 12:10. I don't get paid any extra, but it starts early and ends late so that we have the extra time. So that's about as much of that dark, and then the rest I'm going to start putting some lighter value in there. You see how painting that edge at the same time, it keeps that, well, I haven't gone over both of it, but it keeps it way cleaner than if I didn't. Except when the value crosses across shapes. I'm going to do, not a shape at a time, but like one section at a time. Does that make sense? So, I mean, just some of this practicality, because this is on the upper left-hand side, and I don't want my hand to be in wet paint, right? And so that's kind of why I decided. But the reason I don't like shape is because shape, I wouldn't paint the background at the same time. And I don't need to paint the black all the way across. I could. I don't need to, because that's just going to be more black. I don't need to blend that black out. But I do need to have it on the edge because I got to soften this edge at the same time. Does that make sense? So it's like an area. So if I was painting over here, I wouldn't just paint this ribbon and not the space on either side of it. I would paint this section at the same time. or this section at the same time. So it may go across objects. In the objects, the value has to blend, and so I need to paint that at the same time. Right? I want to try to get this gradation all the way done. You wouldn't want, when you're painting your gradations, did anybody stop in the middle of a gradation? Yeah, no one wants to do that because you can't blend it once it's dry, right? So you would want to finish the gradation out. What are you guys whispering about? You see, I got this dark paint up there. Just eliminate that.
So how do you know how dark it's supposed to be in a particular area?
I'm looking closely and comparing. The first value I put down is the most important one because intuitively I will say that needs to go lighter, and so if I start too dark or I start too light, it'll throw everything else off. It's like building a building, like the first hole you dig or the first piece of wood you put in, it sets the stage for everything else. If it's off, everything else will be off.
Right.
And music, the first note, I mean, that's why they have like the harmonica, right? Or the keys on the, I don't know anything about music. But it's the same idea, right?
So you're just picking the one that, like you said.
So I started this way, and I knew it got lighter as it went up, and that looks pretty close to that, right?
But you're just kind of basing it off like that corner.
Yeah, and now I have this to compare against that. And like the contrast has to be enough. And so,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm comparing it against the other parts of itself, the other parts of the gradation, against this one as well. Because it's like, I'll just tell you this right now, the very first thing you paint is going to be the most important, that the value be correct, because if you paint it too dark, you'll shift the whole rest of the painting too dark. If you paint it too light, you'll shift the whole rest of the painting too light. Because it's very hard, it will look wrong if you paint it correctly after the first one is wrong. And, I guess I can introduce this little tool. Usually use this in color. So this tool, when I hold this up here, that's that. Okay, in that same space, that's that. Oh, that may be a little lighter. No, that's about right. So that isolates the color, where you can just see that little part. Sometimes that's helpful versus seeing the whole. It breaks it down to a small bite. You also notice that I move these closer to each other so that I can see both at the same time. Oftentimes I'll see students do this, and I'm like, man, that is really hard. Because this, you have to rely on visual memory because you can't see both of those at the same time. And your whitest white is not going to look white on your first pass. It's going to pick up some of that charcoal. If you have any paint in your brush, that's going to be okay. So we're not going to get the full value range on this first pass. Now, some of you who did really well on those first gradations are going to struggle here because you were part of the tiny brush club. Maybe you used a tiny brush. And here, some of you have a bigger hand, and it's going to feel more comfortable making a big gradation versus a little tiny gradation. So that'll be fun to see who does what. I'm really going to town. If you try to do this with a tiny brush, it'll take you a billion years. You'll be working on the first pass next semester. Notice how the paint is not thick like frosting. You don't want that. Okay, so that's going to be darker right there. Dark there. Do this light still, right? Map that out. So now I've got half that gradation done. So I'm just going to take this. change the direction on it when I need the blend to be harder. You see how it goes horizontal whenever I have a line, vertical when I don't. That's pretty good. I take this brush. Bailey, can you do that? Can you do what I just did? All right, so just by that one stroke, it's softened it. I'm going to take this and go back and forth a little bit, soften it even more. Soften that edge so that it turns back. Hard edges always make things come forward. And so if you want your cylinder to look like it got ran over by a steamroller and is flat and two-dimensional, make a hard edge on the edge of it, right? If you want it to curve and move back in space, it's got to have a soft edge. You want to do the rest of this? Yeah, I'll let you. This is dark, dark, gray. Whoa. Easy, Tiger. Every time I put a value down like that, I put it, do you see I just dab it on there and then I look and I'm like, is that right? And if it's wrong, I change it. And I'm wrong like 3/4 of the time. I'm too dark, too light. But that's being like totally mindful of the mark I'm making and not just, it's not like a paint by number where I'm not thinking at all and filling in. So I'm comparing, I'm like, is that darker than that? That part is.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the part between the cube-ish thing and the cylinder-ish thing,
Mm-hmm.
maybe use tape or like a little brush.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Just for the sake
I'm not sure that I've solved that. Probably be what I would use and probably tape it. I may paint this and then tape it off when it's dry, and then paint the other part. There's some people that love taping. It's like their favorite thing to do. I don't totally love it. Just because maybe I'm just lazy or something. I don't know what it is. It seems like I don't want to set my brush down enough to like pull out the tape. It's dumb, but I get that way. I'll run out of a color that I really use all the time, and I'll try to do workarounds versus just stopping and squirting out more paint. It's a dumb thing my mind does. Now I've got that established, I can destroy that edge. Oh, you guys can't even see. You guys can't even see what I'm doing. What's that?
I didn't notice. I was looking at your actual hand. But
So things like that helps me stay on target because I know that this is pure black and I know that that blends. So that's got to be there. This is probably too dark, but that's got to be there at that place. Are you guys excited to actually paint something that's something
a little bit.
instead of a gradation? We could just paint more gradations if you want. It's funny, for some people it's so super important that what they're doing could be something good that they would like, that like studies, they can't do those well because they don't care about it. Some people are geared that way.
So what did you do about that little?
This part in here. Well, I could have left it and then painted it later. I'll just paint it when everything's dry. I'll put it in there. Little brush. I mean, I left it right there.
And then on the picture, on the cylinder count,
Uh-huh.
it's lighter right there on the tube, so that's just like light reflection.
Oh yeah, it's just a shadow of the board.
Or
Right.
on the actual cylinder.
Oh, the cylinder. Oh yeah, that's light that's you talking about this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's light that's reflected over. Yeah, I'll paint that on there. Yeah. But actually, when you paint those things, it makes it look so good. I think these big gradations are way easier than those little ones. Are you feeling good about this? About my painting or about your painting? Oh, good. That's all I care about. What do you think is going to be the hardest part? Yeah? Anything you're worried about? What? You don't know how you're going to be able to do it at all. What looks hard about it? It's the same. This is just the same gradations you just did. So what's hard about it? And you've already painted a sphere before. Same. Am I doing something special that you're like, I don't know how did he do that? How did he do that? Man, that's amazing. Joey, you nervous? You should be. Because it's hard. Kayla's terrified. She doesn't even know how she's going to do anything. You're not scared of anything, right? Buying a new house today. Exciting. Yeah. It's my cabin in the woods. When the apocalypse happens, I got a place to go. What's that? Yeah. I can't live with my kids in the middle of... This is in no man's land. Like, it is really... We went for a walk, and about a mile away, there was some trailers there. And I saw these ducks. The ducks were living underneath the trailer. Do you know how disgusting that is? Ducks. I hope nobody has ducks living underneath the trailer. You look like reasonable folks. But the smell of ducks and the sound of ducks under your house. Yeah, the address of it is 25 Hillbilly Holler. Kid you not. First night I stayed there, So I've stayed there a couple of times, even though I'm just buying it today. The person I'm buying it from, I know, he let me stay there. First time I stayed there, I was like, I need a gun here. Like, it did not feel safe without a gun, because it is out. There's no phone reception, just a cabin in the woods. I've seen too many scary movies in my life, I think. What time is it? All right. 3 minutes. I'll show you how I'm going to do this, but that does not mean it's the right way. I can't just stop this gradation right there. Is anybody excited to start this? One person? You're excited? How do you feel, Emily? Not excited? Why aren't you excited? You did well in the first one. Well, that's a negative prediction. Okay, so how much do you get done before next class? I don't know. I would try to get as much as I got done. You do want to paint some, so come into next class, you have some questions. Make sure you study for your quiz. Not too bad. first thing I want to point out is that you see how I turned everything upside down? Why in the world would I have done that, Austin?
So you can get to it easier and see it. Like, so you can see it to where you can get it. Let's say.
So I can see it where I can get it. So it's incredibly important that you're painting at eye level. Don't paint under your belly button. This is uncomfortable. Your eyes are not down here. Your eyes are up here. You don't shoot a gun from here if you want to be accurate. You move your gun up here to where your eyes are. In the same way, you don't paint from your belly button. It doesn't work well. So it's super important that you move your painting where you're painting at your eye level. Now, if I just I moved this several different ways, but then I looked at it and I'm like, oh, this will be great. I can paint this whole section. My hand is not going to be in paint. I'll have the left-hand side completely done, and then I can move on to the right-hand side. All right? So I recommend that you think strategically about how you're going to line this up. Let me just see that I smudged that. Did you have a question, or are you just going to watch?
I'm just going to watch for a minute.
Watch the master. We'll probably paint on this some outside of class so that you guys don't have to watch me demonstrate the whole time. I don't know how useful that's going to be. For your development, but I do want to show you the second pass, at least on one part. And I'm starting where because everything is based off of what's done before, so I'm starting where I was, right here. I know that that's pretty close to the accurate value. I'm going to have black here. Looks like pure black there. I'm going to put those in as anchors. Just a little bit on that edge. These pure out of the tube values, I'm always looking for those because I don't have to mix those. I'm going to paint a bunch of this on the right because I don't want my hand in it, but just enough to remind me that that's going to be black too. Okay. Needs to be just a hair darker. Actually, I put it on there, it looks too dark. So when I'm putting this on here, I'm contrasting it with that black. Seeing if that contrast is too much or too little. That's about right. Now, look, which is darker? So anytime you see an edge, you have to ask yourself, which one's darker. And it's amazing sometimes when people see an edge, they will paint the wrong one darker to create the edge. So you have to ask yourself when it's talking about grays. So you ask yourself, which one of these things is darker, that or that? Which one? This one is darker than that one. And so I know, based off of this, that my mixture for that edge has to be darker. Right? It has to be. Sometimes, believe it or not, people will paint it inverse. So they'll want to create the edge, and so they'll flip-flop it. Have to check those things whenever you put the value down. That's why everything is based off of everything else. If this is wrong, if this is too dark, then that's going to be way too dark. Or if this is too light, then that one's going to be too light. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know that they understand what I'm saying because they haven't done it yet, but maybe they do. They think they do.
Question that came up kind of yesterday, like on leaving sharp edges.
Uh-huh.
So I thought you would say maybe it could be softened.
Uh-huh.
Am I right?
Yeah, I showed them last time, like on this edge, right here. Oh, you can't see it on the picture. This edge right here, where I painted it as sharp, and then I take a brush where half of it goes on one side and half of it goes on the other, and I go over that a couple of times to soften that edge, right? Even if, like, I'd much rather it be too soft than too hard any day.
So like if they're leaving something and they've done a square, they should like soften the edges on the outside edge as well. Not just leave the square sharp.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're saying.
If you only got like that one square done and it was sharp edges all the way around on all its square edges. Like
Now, so this edge, I can't see this on the picture. This edge here is softer than that edge because it's based off a rectangle, and it's supposed to be crisp as it moves back in space, just like this edge is super sharp. But on a curved object, the edge is going to be softer. I don't mind that being razor sharp. It should be razor sharp. That should be razor sharp if it's accurate, but I still drag my brush across because that first pass, the brush mark will be kind of wavy like that. And going over it is going to make smooth it out. So you were so good, Avery, at determining this is darker than that. Now look at here. Which one's darker, this one or that one? This one's darker, right? And then look here. Which one's darker, this one or this one? This one. Which is darker up here, this one or this one? Yes. So do you see how what happens is it creates like a little sandwich where that value has to like weave in between those other values that are created. And if it can't, then you've made a mistake somewhere, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm like, that value does get lighter as it goes up. I need to make sure that this is lighter than that, because if I'm not careful, it'll be darker. Maybe part of the problem, my shadow is not quite dark enough. Now that was too extreme. Shadow was not dark enough over here. Making it difficult for that one to be lighter. I have a feeling that none of this is making any sense to you, any of you. I'm hoping it does, but I'm suspicious. like that Sue was trying to figure out what I would say. She's not like thinking on her own. She's like, what David would say. It's good. This is that dark to light within a form. Here's a magic spot where it switches over. Here it's darker than that, and here it's lighter than that. So that's an important place to pay attention to. Those of you that did paint, how did you decide where to start? Did you start with a cylinder because I did?
I started the furthest place over, so like in
Mm-hmm. You feel good about that decision?
Yeah.
What about you, Emily? Where did you start?
I started on
A square? Like a cube? Was it easy? Well, you started it. I'm just asking if what you started, was it easy? Okay. Did somebody else pick this same image that I'm painting? Who's that? Oh, Allie. This sphere is not easy. The way the gradation is set up, it's kind of tough, actually. It's like a circular gradation. You have the advantage of watching me paint it ahead of you. Okay, can you see how this part is too dark? I think this is maybe a little bit too dark. So I just nudge it with a little bit of white on my brush. Do a little bit wider. Well, I can tell that was that soft mixing wipe because it did not nudge.
I noticed on mine, I tried getting charcoal and everything that I did.
Charcoal or charcoal?
Charcoal. Is there a way to like get the excess on it? It's not
You just wipe it all off. Then you can't see it from.
Exactly.
Not really.
So I just found myself like only using white, because then the charcoal was mixing it better.
Yeah. So there is, I mean, there's some people that do like these whole elaborate charcoal drawings directly on their surface, and then they'll use like a fixative on there and then paint over it. But there's some questions about like the archivalness, because you're adding this other thing on there, like to seal it. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. Can I tell you what I do? I don't use charcoal. Charcoal's for amateurs. No. No, I'm just teasing. I use actually carbon paper to transfer. It's like waxy, and so it won't blend in as much, but it leaves a harder line, which can serve its own problem if that line's in the wrong place or over a light value, right? So if I was circling where a highlight is and it's like bright red, then it may be hard to get that out. And so I'll even have to like lightly sand it out so it's not so bright. So it can leave lines all over the place, where the charcoal kind of just bleeds and fades into the paint. I think you guys do a good job. These could actually be, I mean, it's a black and white painting of shapes, but it could actually look kind of nice. Do you art majors know about the visiting artist that we have coming this January? Going to be doing woodwork sculpture. Kind of fun. She's super nice as a person. Way nicer than me. Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a combination of, like, you're going to make some individual work, and then you guys are collectively going to work on an installation. That's a lot of the kind of work that she does. She makes art for public spaces, big projects. There's a lot of money in that. There's a lot of money in there's so many call outs for sculptures and murals and just big public art. The cities, like, you get a permit to build a new building and you have to make a deal with the city that you have to put in a piece of public art, because the city wants to be seen as like cultural. And so you have to spend, on the new building, you have to set aside $10,000 for an art budget. And so there's just tons of call outs for sculptures, public paintings. This rag has seen better days. Does anybody have a good rag? Like, did they chop up a good rag right there? No? It's not useful. I had a whole bunch of them, but you know what? I put them over there and you guys have confiscated them. So now I'm just looking for this one sad one. This is why I was saying that this is kind of a tricky gradation because you gotta have like this circular blend. Which is not super easy to pull off. I don't fuss with that too much. This first pass. You see, I don't know if you saw that. I did it quickly, but I went over top of that edge where it hit the other. I went half on this side and half on that side to soften that edge. Easy peasy. Joey's football team played this weekend? Is it home game or away? Who do you guys play? Oh, this is another one of these like really tough teams, isn't it? You feel like you stand a chance?
Yeah.
What makes you think that? Watch this. You see how jagged and sharp that edge is? Fix that later. You see now why, oh, you can't even see what I'm doing down there. Paint up here. I was going to say, do you see now why I painted this edge? This because it allows me to blend that while it's still wet down there. And then I can just fill in the rest of the background. Alright, it's time for that gray. Yeah. Ooh, that's light enough. Taking good notes. High expectations. I want to not be able to tell the difference between yours and mine. I was a ceramics guy when I was in school, and I always, whatever my teacher would make, I would try to copy it, see if I could make it as well as his. If not better, or somebody would mistake his for mine, or mine for his. I don't know that I recommend that. I'm just saying that's what I did. So those of you that did paint, what was hard about it? Anything hard?
When I painted like the cutout where the cone is supposed to be, it looked flat. Like just straight across. It didn't look like there was any depth to it.
Your cone.
Where the cone is like cut out of the cube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Looks flat.
Yeah.
Did you paint the rest of the cube?
Yeah.
Or just that part?
I painted the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. So what I do whenever I have something that looks wrong is I just go back and forth and back and forth. I play that game, how are these two things different? And if I painted it exactly like the photograph, it will look exactly like the photograph, right? And if the photograph looks like a cone cut out, then the painting will look like a cone cut out. Sometimes whenever you paint just a small section of it, it won't look right until you get the rest of it for context. So maybe that's part of it. But it sounds like you may have enough, so there may be some value that's off or some problem. Could you look at it and say, I think that's
Well, I
not
don't know
right?
if my values are right because it looks like they're all the same value for like each side of the cone.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I did it. But I feel like that's
Trust your eyeballs, whatever your eyeballs are telling you. Do that. You don't have to, you don't have to color correct the photograph. If you just match the photograph, it will look just like the photograph, which looks real, right? You don't have to improve the reality, not at this stage of the game. So I don't know, I'd have to look at it. Sometimes when I'll go around and I'll ask students, like, why is this value? Well, I need it to be like that so it looks clearer. Like, don't do that. Whatever that is, don't do that. Don't enhance it. Because that's the wrong part of your brain that's injecting its opinion on things. And it doesn't know what it's talking about. One of those keys is to paint shapes, not objects. So what that means is I'm painting this kind of gray shape here and not thinking about what that is. It doesn't matter what that is. It makes zero difference what the thing is. I'm just painting shapes of gradations and value. That's it. Like, completely mindless of what it is. It doesn't matter. When you start thinking about what the thing is, that's whenever you can really get in trouble. So what I was saying is, having had this nice gradation on there, this little section before allows me to paint that opaque black right up to that place, and I don't have to blend that in because it's already been blended in. Unfortunately, I did not do that along the top. I'm going to have to pay for it. There's no way to blend wet and dry paint. So what that means is you have to repaint that section if you want to make it soft. Both areas really need to be wet in order for a blend to happen. Oh, I still can't see that. I'm going to adjust the camera. Sometimes the act of painting upside down actually helps you to see things differently. A lot of times I will intentionally paint upside down. I'm painting from a photograph. Help me not think about what it is I'm painting, and just look. I'll tell you right now that ellipse is going to need to be redrawn. So have you guys heard the saying, loose lips sink ships? You heard this before? No? It was anybody know where it came from? People that have heard it? In World War II, the Germans sent spies to harbor towns in the U.S. And they tend to be beautiful young ladies who would drink with the sailors and get them drunk, and the sailors would reveal when they were leaving to go over to Europe. The spies would then send that information to the German U-boats, and they would now know when the boats are crossing, attack the boats, and sink the ships. So they made the military, it was such a problem, the military made this campaign that said loose lips sink ships. And I always think like loose ellipses sink shipses. Way I think. This ellipse is bad. See how the end is all smashed? Definitely going to need to fix that. If I wasn't filming, I would turn this thing upside down or some other configuration to paint this black on this top part. But you can't paint it this way. You see, there's my hand's in the way. I can't see where things are, so you have to paint from the other side. This is an awkward angle.
So what do you do about the ellipse if you're going to draw? Just do the remainder?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fix it a little bit right now. Because the more I look at it, the more about it. If I waited to fix that later, I would have to really work hard to get that paint opaque. Enough to cover over that black. That ellipse has got all kinds of problems. Who painted? Did you paint that part of my ellipse? It doesn't look right. So the other solution is you wait till it's dry. And you retrace that section and fix it that way and repaint it.
How would you trace that on your paper?
Well, you got to wait till the painting's dry. You get your drawing where it lines up. Same thing you just did with charcoal. I'm going to actually let you guys use carbon paper on the next one so it's not quite as messy. But you guys, you wouldn't want to do that until you get your first pass done. Did that answer your question? Does that make sense? So you get paint on the whole thing, and then you realize there's places where there's drawing error.
Then, could you see the charcoal without point blanking?
Well, that's why I'm going to let you use carbon paper. You could see it. You could see it, but we're going to use some red carbon paper or black carbon paper. You can choose. Or you can freehand draw it. Like, a lot of times I won't use carbon paper, but I know I'll fix the drawing. Like that straight edge isn't straight, I'll use a T-square and just use a colored pencil, sharp colored pencil, and I'll just put the line in. That's better-ish. I expect better out of you, Hallie, next time. You wouldn't? Just softening that back edge a little bit. Make it fade into the back, fade into the black in the back. Okay, that's better than it was. Okay. What do you guys want to see?
How do you do little corners?
Little corners? Like right up in there and over there? I mean, you saw what I did. I kind of overpaint. You have to overpaint sometimes, and then you use the other brush to paint over top of it. Like that's what I did here. Like I painted that too big, and then I used the other brush to kind of paint over top the places that, I mean, you just use
Like
a little
edge
brush.
paint.
Yeah, yeah. Feeling good about this. I give this to my wife for Christmas. It's what you always wanted, baby. It's a cylinder and a sphere. Did you guys know that my wife was one of my students a long time ago? Embarrassing, but it's true. I mean, I was 25. She's a few years older than me. So this is a gradation that goes light to dark. Avery, did you know that I developed a fear of giants?
You said you don't have a fear of giants.
You're like, that's not a big.
The funniest part about that joke was the look on your face whenever I told you that. You're like, what?
I told your, a pun walks into a bar.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
A
one.
couple days ago, and I got like 5 people laughing.
Oh, yeah.
It's
See? You know, they just came out with a laughing motorcycle. It's a Yamaha.
He's like,
It's a Yamaha.
you need to make a book.
Hmm.
Like one of those bathroom books.
Yeah.
then for this edge? Are you gonna just come through with white?
Yeah, I will
Like just
probably.
super thin, or?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll use the edge here, and I'll do it, and it'll probably come over into the other part of the paint at some point,
Mhm.
and then I'll have to go back in and cut in.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
I think so. Like do the
So I'll
white
paint
on
it, and it
then
won't be totally smooth,
right.
and then I'll have to fix it with the
like, the
values on the
black.
other side. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. That makes
That's
sense.
that's my
Kind of
gameplay.
like layered it on, so because you can't get it that thick. on its
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it would be difficult to get it that thin and opaque
Right.
in one pass, so it will have to be a thicker mark.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good questions.